So many questions, so much waiting of when is Texas truly going to be back? Well, it all came together in 2023. And of course, it's now off to the SEC, a higher standard. And I think the ceiling and through the roof is the sky for this program, certainly going forward under Steve Sarkisian. Nick Battles here, breaking down some Texas football for us. We're going to look at the offense here. Nick, we appreciate you stopping by. Of course, you can catch everybody on Nino's Corner, and Nick has joined us a number of times, and I totally recommend checking out his work. Nick, what's going on?
Man, look, man, I'm good, man. How you doing?
I am doing well, and we haven't talked since the end of last season, so I'm just curious before we start to break down the offense, just how did you take all that in regards to, I'm sure that you weren't surprised because the talent was all over the place, but the talent's been all over the place in various forms a number of times, but they put it all together. They came through and shoot, even though they got outplayed by Washington by and large.
I almost had a shot to win still.
They had 4 shots from the 12-yard line.
Exactly.
Wouldn't that have been crazy?
Exactly. Crazy game. Yeah, man, Texas has always had the talent, but they've had it at the wrong positions, I think. So we had Tom Herman, we had Strong. Those guys were recruiting a lot of guys at wide receiver and running back, but they didn't, I don't think they had the trenches right. So during the last 5 years, prior to Sark actually getting here, Texas had the least amount of scholarship offensive linemen in the Big 12, tied with Kansas. So they had all the guys for running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, but the trenches were not sewed up. Steve Sarkisian, his first 2 years, he's brought in 12 linemen, and it has been very fruitful for us.
So I'm sure that you could produce a video on Arch Manning every day and probably set records in terms of views. It's always the newest guy, and when you get the name Manning, but there's another guy that I assume is going to hang on to his starting quarterback position, and he was the guy everybody was talking about like 2 years ago, and of course that's Quinn Ewers, who hit on 69% of his passes. So your thoughts about Quinn Ewers, how steady he was last season, worked through an injury during the backstretch, and came through, leading them to the playoffs, of course.
Yeah, man, I think Quinn's going to be great this year. Texas fans, I think we get a little antsy about the quarterback position. All right, we had Vince and we had Colt, and and now it's Quinn, and people get really antsy about it, but people forget that it took Vince Young to his 4th year to bring a championship here and to be like the guy. His 3rd year at Texas, Texas lost. Texas lost 12-0 against OU. All right, we didn't score a single point against OU. So we were barely winning games this 3rd year. Kind of similar, like to this year. And then Vince's last year, we took off. We kind of killed everybody, and then go up to Cali and actually win the game there. So I think Quinn is going to do really good things this year. We've lost a lot of talent, but we've gotten a lot of talent too. So look, this is Quinn's year. It's his year.
And if there was any part of his game, Nick, that you would like to see him step up, what would that be?
Deep ball. Got to hit that deep ball, man. And so Quinn's been doing it, right? So against Bama last year, he did it. Last year against Houston, he did it as well. But it's just got to be, if he can hit that at least once a game, I think it's going to really, just make strides for the offense.
Malik Murphy moves on to Duke. Good for him. Hopefully he can have a successful stay there. He's got a huge opportunity. The guy's a physical specimen. So with his absence, are you a little bit concerned? People would love to see Arch Manning. That would be a great story and all that sort of thing. Nobody wants to see Quinn Ewers get hurt, but it's the nature of the game. Mm-hmm. Just your thoughts about missing Murphy and having to go to a completely inexperienced option.
It helps to have, a problem where your second string quarterback is one of the most highly ranked, guys in the history, so you have Arch Manning come in. He's actually been running the system here, at Texas from his high school days too as well. So he knows the system in and out. This kid was born to be a quarterback, right? So his grandfather was a quarterback. Both his uncles were quarterbacks too as well, right? So look, he's a guy that if he has to step in, I don't think Texas fans are going to be, shocked if he does well. I think they'd be probably more shocked if he didn't do well.
The legacy is really crazy when you really let it soak in from Archie Manning, all the way down, going back, into the late 60s. All right, this running back room, of course, Jonathan Brooks was the guy, but he got nicked up and knocked out late last season after a 1,000-yard season. And C.J. Baxter, of course, the five-star, looked the part most of the time. And Jadon Blue certainly was a big factor.
Yeah, man, Jaden Blue. A lot of people love to forget, Jaden Blue didn't play his last year of high school. But prior to him sitting out that last year, Jaden Blue was the number one running back in the country, and he was almost on the, like on his path to be a 5-star. And so once he didn't play his senior year, he dropped in the rankings. But if you go back and look at the rankings, Texas, had the top back in the state of Texas, with Brooks, and then had Jaden Blue, who was the top back in the country prior, to his senior year. And then you get the top back in the country again with Baxter. And I think when Brooks got hurt last year, it kind of opened up things. And Blue was a speedster, man. He's a guy that next year at the combine, he's going to run a 4.3. And he's a big guy too. He's about 6 foot, maybe like 200 pounds or so. But he's a fast guy, a lot of speed, and him and Baxter are going to be a hell of a 1-2 punch here.
And by the way, thanks for correcting me on Jaden Blue. That's a name I would have gotten right during the playoffs, but the off season's long and I forgot. So we want to get the young men's names correct. We move on to wide receiver, and there's a lot of names headed out the door. Of course, A.D. Mitchell, Jadavian Sanders, who I was always impressed with.
Yeah, JT.
I'm looking forward to see what he does at the next level. Jordan Whittington, and of course, Xavier Worthy. So that's a lot of talent out the door, but we know how Texas recruits. So what's the next group look like?
It's going to be wonderful. Texas gets the top guy from Bama, getting Bond to come in. You got Jonte Cook, who was also one of the top guys in the country last year, coming out as well. You have Ryan Wingo. He's a true freshman, came from St. Louis, about 6'2", 210 pounds. And I think he ran out like a 10.4 or something in the 100-meter dash coming out of high school. He's a guy that just has a different gear, just a different speed as well. Getting Matthew Golden from Houston too as well, another speedster guy. And then you got guys like Ryan Niblett, who came in from the class last year, who also ran a 10.3 or a 10.4. So Sark is building his team around a lot of speed. And then look, man, you got DeAndre Moore. I keep forgetting about Moore, who came from California last year as well. So this is his second year in the system. And look, Sark has his guys. Sark has his guys, and we still got a guy named Silas Bowden, so he's coming from Oregon State. So he should be here, sometime in the summer. And so, look, Sark has his room. He's going to always keep it packed and stacked. And kids who are wideouts and tight ends, they are going to want to come play at Texas. And then, so talking about JT Sanders, he's going up for the draft, right? So we got Gunnar Helm, who's outstanding, great blocker, great catcher. But we also got Nia Black, too, from Alabama, too, as well. A big freaky 6'4", 215-pound tight end who's probably running 4.5 next year at the combine, too, as well. And so Texas has the talent stacked up. And as long as Texas can just protect the quarterback and keep that line straight, I think Texas is going to be really good on offense this year.
You mentioned off the top, Nick, the difference between this Texas team and the ones that failed in the past. And a lot of that might be some mental toughness, some playing mistake-free, that sort of thing. But you most specifically went to the line of scrimmage.
The trenches.
And so for the offensive line, they've got 4 coming back, I see.
Yeah. So, look, man, we got Kelvin Banks Jr. who's probably going to be the first tackle, next year off the board. You got DJ Campbell, who's playing right guard. Center is going to be Jake Majors. He's been the steady guy there for the last 5 years. So Christian Jones is going up to the draft this year, but we got a big guy named Cam Williams. It's about 6'6", 6'7", about 350, 360 pounds at right tackle. He's a wall, and he's very physical, very just really, really good feet as well. The thing is going to be at a left guard. We got Hayden Connor at left guard, so he's been a starter there for 3 years, but there's a lot of talent behind him. You got Cole Hudson, who actually started as a true freshman 2 years ago, but he got hurt. So he's pushing for that job too. And also, we got, what's the kid's name? It's going to be Neto U. You know what I'm saying? Neto is nasty, physical blocker. He's one of those guys that you say, if it's time to run the ball, and it's on the 1 yard line and his goal line, who do I need to push the pile? And it's going to be Neto. So Neto is a nasty guy. And from the first 2 practices here, with full pads, he has been the guy that's actually come out, with the first team reps at left guard.
Nick, we were talking USC football a few days ago, and they make no bones about it. They're going to the Big Ten. They got to get bigger, stronger. They just have to play that level of football and be able to take on that kind of 4-quarter game, with Texas, is there truly any kind of transition to the SEC, or just they just keep doing what they're doing and say, hey, this is who we are and it's good enough, let's go?
Keep doing what you're doing. So when Sark was hired here, I think the AD, they understood that they were going to the SEC, and they needed somebody who was going to come in and mold the team to be an SEC team. And Sark was the guy who worked at Bama. So he brought his guys with him that were at Bama too as well. So Cal Flood being one of the best, probably line coaches in the country, and he's built up the entire offensive line to where it was probably one of the best. Probably I wouldn't say in the country last year, but definitely probably top 15 in the country last year. I think next year for the SEC, they're going to be a top 2 or 3 line in the conference. But yeah, it's just do what you keep doing. Sark wants a physical team. You see it just up and down that line. I think the average weight for the line, this year it's going to be about 330 pounds. So they're like an NFL caliber line with about probably 3 to 4 guys that will play on Sundays.
And Nick, you know this better than I do. This transition to the SEC comes at a good time, because if this was 2 or 3 years ago,
yeah,
I'm not like a lot of people that just think Texas would be embarrassed, because I just think they had too much talent for that. But it wouldn't have looked good. They wouldn't have been, the record might have been a little rough.
Yeah, I think maybe, let's say 3 years ago, it's probably a 6-win team in the SEC because they just don't have the depth on the offensive line. But this year and last year, Sark has built a monster offensive line, defensive line. He's done really well. I think that they can stick with the big boys there. And Texas showed, just this past year going against Bama, that they went, into Bama and they dominated them on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And they pretty much did that for the entire season. I don't have any problems with Texas going to the SEC. I think Sark is relishing this. I think he understands the SEC is going to be wide open this year. You got Georgia. Honestly, Bama's still going to be good as Bama, right? And but other than those 2 teams and like Ole Miss, it's wide open. And I think Texas sees that their talent level is just as good as anybody else in the conference, and they might actually make a shot at this and hopefully go for it next year.
And let's face it, Sark's been a coach at 3 major programs, and this is the first year he really pulled through. If you look at USC, that's a disappointment. Of course, the off-the-field issues could be used there. Washington, his predecessor, his successor, both did a better job. So there was really nothing to.
I don't know about the predecessor.
Coach. I'm sorry, what's that?
So Washington, I think people forget Washington was 0-12, when Sark took over that team. And by year 4, he had him with 9 wins. So that's a huge turnaround for like a 4-year span. So, that was one of the reasons he actually got the job, in a Cali. But, Cali was a bad situation for him. But it's all about learning, and just second chances. But I think Washington, people kind of, see the final record and see that, he was 9-win guy. But look, he took a team that won no games and he got them to 9 wins within 4 years. So.
No, it's a great point. What I was looking for there, Nick, is, there were question marks concerning Steve Sarkisian, not about his offensive prowess or anything like that, but running a program.
Mm-hmm.
At what point were you convinced? What was it? A game? Was it a decision? Was there anything in particular that you were like, okay, I do believe he's the guy?
First year, seeing that he was building the trenches up. Once I saw him go when he went full throttle, for the offensive line, and all the guys in, Texas football and the podcasters and everybody who, I talk to, we always say how much we missed on the big line guys, right? It was, they're always they were going to A&M, they're going to Bama or Ole Miss, or they're going to LSU. We're losing a lot of guys that were in state, not coming to Texas. And Sark and Cal Flood, got those guys to come to Texas. And that first year, when Sark brought in 7 offensive linemen in one class, I said, yeah, things are different. Things are going to be different. And, it paid dividends for us. The first year, I think we won just 5 games or so, but we saw the maturation process with these guys. And then once we got Quinn the next year and seeing what Quinn did is his first year, the team went from 5-7 to 8-4. And I'll tell you what, that line was just starting to build, and we had 2 guys who were freshmen starting on that line, and and the team goes 8-4, And then the next year, win the Big 12, go to the college football playoffs, and you're seeing that these guys are starting to grow up in front of you. Kelvin Banks Jr. and DJ Campbell. And we saw Christian Jones get an extra year. And he went from a guy that was not going to get drafted to a guy that developed. And now he's a top 150 prospect in the draft now. So you're seeing that this staff can develop players. And so that's when I kind of figured out I would say like the second year once we saw that those players from that, the last coaching staff, when they got developed, I was like, yeah, this is a great staff. And, just give them about 3 or 4 years.
Nick Battle, Nino's Corner, even if you don't like Texas. If you're a college football fan and you want to keep up with the Blue Bloods, there you go. Follow Nick right there. Nick, we appreciate you stopping by. Would love to have you back to talk some D.
Definitely, man. We'll talk defense.